Hello and welcome everyone to the 44th webinar series of AABN. It's indeed a testament to the virtues of technology that we can implement and adapt to new working methods to continue delivering on our mandates. Technology and innovation have enabled many of us to a great degree to continue to live, work, study, and virtually maintain social contact with one another as best as possible during this period. As someone once said, the show must go on. Not that this is a show, but I appreciate the effort to get together, to be together virtually. I especially thank the AABN core committee members for your support. We are here truly as one networking community. We do our best when we do it together. So this is a good first step in the right direction to forge synergy between all of us for one goal we all want to achieve, that is to promote networking. Before we begin this webinar, I would like to express my heartfelt gratitude to all of you who sincerely committed to this event to make it a success. This event would have been impossible without the support of each one present here. At AABN, webinars are organized and conducted for the entrepreneurs and general audience to gain insight and information that would remain effective in their life, exercises, and work. Each topic for discussion and debate are chosen keeping in mind the interests of our entrepreneur community. The last webinar was based on the road ahead for MSME, which was graced with positive feedbacks from the participants. The topic of discussion for today's webinar is compassionate communication, redefining the customer experience. Communication is an investment that helps to improve our knowledge and attitude towards life. Communication helps an individual to build one skill, set goals, work on the approach, believe in their potential, and improve awareness. Through this webinar, an individual is given a platform to identify the vulnerable spots, gain understanding, focus on essential aspects, improve the leadership quality, attitude, and confidence, and provide practical communication skills as well as the frequent changes needed in their lifestyle. In 2017, a report cited that less than one quarter of companies consider themselves good at making changes to their business based on customer insights. Inarguably, this sentiment is an extension of the findings 4 years earlier. That is 67% of large companies rated themselves as good at soliciting customer feedback, yet only 26% think they are good at acting on it. This is a common problem for many organizations. But if they recognize that this is the case, what's holding them back? For organization to close the gap between understanding the customer and executing against that knowledge, customer centricity must be translated from an industry buzzword to a tangible strategy. Forward learning organizations acknowledge that articulating a customer centric version is merely the tip of the iceberg. They are coming to grips with the reality that barriers to customer centricity have nothing to do with the customer at all. Culture is strategy for lunch, and naturally, internal barriers lead to behaviors that detract from a customer centric culture. Leadership must be purposeful in this customer centric vision and create a clear path forward, drawing upon both rational and emotional belief systems of its employees. True leaders walk the talk of customer centricity, a living demonstration of the culture they are striving to cultivate. Taking a holistic approach to serve design, execution, and transformation, communication prepares you to create an excellent and exceptional service culture that supports employees, delight customers, and drives organizational performance. Through this program, one will return with the framework to aim your firm's operating models, to align your firm's operating models and strategic service mission with changing consumer needs, shifting market demands, and an evolving competitive landscape. Over the past 1 year, we have been able to put together online programs to keep our AABN community not just engaged, but also meet a range of inspiring people who can help shape your ideas and thoughts. Today, we have one such personality, Mr. Varghese Eipe. What makes him an apt choice for this audience is that he too is an alumnus of Annamalai University and he belongs to the 1992 batch mechanical. I have the pleasant duty of welcoming and introducing him today at Compassionate Communication, Redefining the Customer Experience, an interactive business networking session. Mr. Varghese Eipe is a dynamic personality and transformational speaker, has always been passionate about making a positive and lasting difference in the lives of people and organizations through the process of internal transformation. With his experiences of having worked with some of the best companies in the world across industry segments and having lived and worked in various countries enables him to share his learnings and experiences garnered over the last 28 plus years. He has helped transform lives and business through structured intervention programs of Aurora Leadership Development and through Mrs. Born to Win Learning Services at companies such as HCL, Swix Data, KPR Group, G-Stamp, Pallava Group, Flowlink, Hotel Annapurna, Chandra Motors, Maverick, PK Steels, Precourt Meridian, Guytone, Good Leathers, KGSL, and many others. Prior to following his passion and helping transform people, he was working with companies such as EDS, HP, Cognizant, MRF, etc. And currently is the founder of Aurora Leadership Development, which is a leadership training, coaching, and consulting firm. If I were to read out all his accomplishments, I will be biting a big chunk of the webinar time. So I'll stop here and let you enjoy the session with Mr. Varghese. I wish to place on record our deep commitment to work tirelessly as a team to carry forward our goals in a constructive, gratifying way. I ensure the webinar will be profitable and fruitful for everyone present here. Thank you all, and over to Varghese.
Thank you so much, sir. I think that is a very big introduction. I don't think I deserve all of that. But let me start by saying good morning and welcome all of you to this session. It has definitely been my privilege to be here with you and have this opportunity to share some of my learnings with you from what I've experienced through my work, as well as the fact that I've been doing for hundreds of companies, having corporate leadership programs conducted on site for them. And I hope some of these sharings or learnings would be useful for you as you take your step forward. Now, it would be unfair for me to not take this chance to also thank the Annamalai Alumni Business Networking team. I think they're doing a fantastic job for the last 40 plus weeks we've been having sessions. There's a lot of consistency and quality in what they're bringing to the table. And I think they all deserve a big round of applause. 40 plus sessions week on week, a lot of untiring effort that goes beyond this. So I think they deserve a big round of applause. Well done. And keep doing this and continue this forward. I'm sure many people are benefited. I heard already while in the initial time somebody mentioning about new orders coming in. So I think it's a great place and it's a great journey for all of us in this together. Now, today what I'm going to be talking to you about is on something called compassionate communication, right? And that's what I want to talk to you about. So before I get into the topic, I wanted to set a little context. Now, this session is not so much only about redefining customer experience, although that's what I given as a title, because this is primarily an entrepreneurial community or people who are working in leadership positions. I think the fact is that this would be applicable in your personal lives too. And someone who truly believes that there is no change unless it's complete change. Most people feel that, we can be we have a certain quality and we can be this way at work and something else at home. Well, that's not real change, right? Real change is when the same thing is being seen by all people associated with us. So it doesn't matter if it's your customer, it doesn't matter if it's your team members, and most importantly, it should also impact your family members. So I assure you that at the beginning, that this will be something that you will be able to take back into your lives. And I'm hoping to hear wonderful stories of how your families have been impacted by the change that you have been able to bring about. Now, how does change happen? Change doesn't happen just by listening to this. Just because you are tuned into this and you're going to listen to what I'm going to say is not necessarily going to bring change. Sure, it's going to gain you some perspective, some realizations, and that's what I'm hoping to do. I'm not teaching you any skills here. This is not some sort of a training program where I'm teaching you certain skills, how to cut this better or how to improve that better. It's about making you gain certain realizations. But the impact of that or the benefit from that will only come when you go back and start implementing this in your own lives. And the best place to start is your homes. And interestingly, even though we say this is a business community or we're all working people, when I typically ask the question to people, why do you work or why are you doing this? And the most common answer I get, possibly nearly 99% of time is for my family. And if family is important, then I think we need to make sure that we do what is required to make a difference for them. Because remember, time is running out. And that's the case for all of us. Just now we talked about a moment of silence. Tomorrow it could be for us. So whatever time we have, we need to make a difference and show the difference in their lives. All right. So with this context, I want us to go back and understand what happens in a typical customer scenario. Your customer has got a whole bunch of complaints. He's unhappy. He's angry. He's got an issue because you have not delivered something as promised, or you're not given it the way it should have come, or it's not come on time. And what happens in a typical conversation? You get into a call because today face-to-face meeting is unlikely. You get into a call, and in most cases, by the time the call ends, you know what? It's either both of you are unhappy, or at least one of you are unhappy. So from being a lose-lose or a lose-win situation, you know, how is that we can shift this to something that's more of a win-win situation, something by which both of you come back out of the call feeling a lot more happy. Now, there are various ways by which we can do that. The one that I wanted to focus today especially is on what I call as compassionate communication. So what do I mean by compassion, right? Any of you, any idea what is the meaning of compassion? I can unmute them so they can share if they want to. I think Gopi or Arik, can you unmute people?
The compassion is actually feeling with the person, sympathizing, and there is the empathy also. No, we are looking at people's perspective, putting ourselves in other person's shoes, and looking at how they perceive. So that is another way of looking at. But compassion, I feel that we are just sympathizing with the other person.
Okay. Anybody else? Anything else you want to share to add to it? So,
non-violent communication.
Non-violent communication. Actually, it's a very interesting book by itself. So if you have a chance, you should read that. It's a good book. The definition of compassion, as by the dictionary, is two parts. The first part is understanding their pain. All right. First part is understanding their pain. The second part is having a desire to do something about the pain. So, like I said, compassion is about understanding the pain and having a desire to do something about the pain. Now, when we talk about these two bits, I want to focus a lot more on the first part, which is understanding the pain, because and the desire bit, the reason as to why we need to do what we do. I'm sure you people are the best. How you mitigate that, how you want to go back and make a difference. It is very contextual to your industry, to the company, to the kind of jobs you do. And I'm sure you people are the best experts in that, right? But I want to focus on the first part, which is how do I understand the pain? Now, to understand the pain, I want to bring about another word that possibly we use, and already somebody did share about it, use that word here. And that word is called empathy, right? Now, what is, according to you, the meaning of empathy?
Being considerate to others.
Being considerate to others, very nice. What else?
Standing in others' shoes.
Beautiful.
So empathy, maybe we could, like we said before, maybe if we are in that situation, how will we just thinking about something?
Very nice. Now, before I actually go on, I just want to ask, is it okay if I use a mix of Tamil also along with English, or is there anyone here in this group who do not understand Tamil? Sometimes
there are a few of them who are there from participating from the western part of the country.
Okay, so they are also logged in today.
Yeah.
Right. So all right, so I'll stick to as much of English, and if I throw in Tamil, it's possibly just to bring about a connect. And if I do that, I'll try to remind myself to bring you the translation, right? So what do we talk about empathy? Well, all of what you said is absolutely right. Now, the dictionary has also a very interesting meaning to it, right? The dictionary definition of empathy has got three parts to it. One is an action of understanding. That means the need of doing something to show that there is understanding. Second is being aware and sensitive. And the last bit is your thoughts and feelings, right? These three put together is what we call empathy. But there's also another simpler definition for empathy, and that is being in somebody else's situations, or like the good old idiom that says, being in somebody else's shoes. Now, somebody did mention that, right? Being in someone else's shoes. So I want to start from there. What do we mean by being in somebody else's shoes, right? Truly speaking, what do we mean by being in somebody else's shoes? Now, I'm sure most of you understand that. Oh, Varghese, it means being in their situation. Being in their spot. Absolutely. So understanding that is not difficult. But if you want to truly gain a realization of what it means to be in somebody else's shoes, then there is something that's very important that you need to understand. And for that, I want to just relate a scenario to you. let's say you and I were outside, right? Let's say you and I were outside in the office and together we are there. And suddenly I talk to you about my shoes. Now this shoe is 50 lakhs. Now, interestingly, when I was preparing, I put 25 lakhs, right? Thinking, 25 lakhs, very amount, it's very expensive for people to get the idea that it's a super duper shoe. Then out of curiosity, I thought, let me go and check, what are the typical costs of some of the most expensive shoes. And then I found out, there are shoes worth millions of dollars. Thankfully, they're for the ladies. But men's shoes in Pathina, because primarily there's simply more men, I'm just using that example. Men's formal shoes in Pathina, we have something in the range of 30 lakhs formal shoe, right? From an Italian company called Testoni. And that made me say, 30 lakhs quality shoe. So people think, what's the big deal? So I made this 50 lakhs, right? The idea of putting it as 50 lakhs is simply to say that that's possibly the best shoe, the most comfortable shoe, the absolutely fantastic fit. And like you said, you will be floating like you're in air. Number Nike Air Murray, you'll just feel like you're floating in air. So if that is the kind of shoe I'm describing here, and I tell you that, hey, you need to definitely wear this and see, right? Now you are excited hearing this. You're like, oh, wow, hey, sure, definitely, Varghese. What do you want to do? You're going to run across and want to come and wear my shoes, right? When you come here to wear my shoes, there is something that you need to do before that. Now, when I typically ask this question in the companies that I take training, many of them would come back and say answers like, sir, you need to make sure you clean your legs. I said, yeah, I know it's a 50 lakh shoe, right? I said, yeah, definitely, yes, that's important. Somebody else would say you need to wear socks. I say, yes, definitely, that's important. What else is important? What else is required? What else is the most important thing that you need to do before you actually wear my shoes? And then somebody will come back and say, Varghese, I need to remove my shoes first. Absolutely, right? You need to remove your shoes first. Now, when I talk about removing your shoes first, what am I talking here about? What is the context? I started off with customer. I talked about the customer experience, and I come back and talk about removing one's shoes. What is the connection between removing one's shoes and the customer experience? Any of you want to tell me something? What am I linking it back to?
I have to remove my own prejudice and the perception what I have, my own. I need to, sometimes I may have ego. I need to just come down at that level and then understand, seek first to understand, then to be understood.
Absolutely. Anyone else? Now, when we are talking about removing one's shoes in the context of a customer experience, what it simply means is that you should be willing to let go of the tag that you are from this company. You are in this role. You are sitting there because you are driving an agenda. As long as you work from an agenda perspective, you are unlikely to get the complete experience of what it is on the other side. Now think about it, right? If you don't remove your shoes, and if you were going to wear my shoes, would you feel the same experience of that 50 lakh shoe, of all the beautiful characteristics I described in the shoe? Would you get it? Absolutely not. And the reason is, why? Because the first point of impact for your feet is not my shoe, it's still your shoe. So whatever feeling that you get from what you're getting will always come from your shoe. And beyond that, in case there is something that comes out from the other shoe, only then you will get that experience. So if you want to actually feel that 50 lakh shoe, you truly have to completely remove your shoe and only then get into my shoe. Even then there is no completion because that's a certain fit. But in general, the point is that if you want to experience what I'm experiencing, you should be willing to let go of it. And in this context of it, the same thing applies here. If you are still operating with people, with your customer, putting on the hat of, now I'm the company length person, and I'm the supplier here, and this is my problem, and I'm talking only from my world point of view, you will never truly understand what they're going through. And in many cases, we don't even get it. And I've had multiple conversations with people, senior people, leadership, owners, and they are surprised at what they discover after a session like this, because suddenly the perspectives they gained were so different. I remember talking to a particular company, and they were sharing with me saying that, Varghese, you know what, we were talking to a customer, and the customer was very happy because there was just delay for a couple of times. Now remember, couple of times for you seem to be okay, but that couple of times for the customer made a world of a difference because they had planned something, they had planned an event and the entire marketing campaign had gone for that, and the goods didn't go on time. And for them, that couple of times was the most important time because it completely upset their whole plans. They had again redo the marketing campaigns because the materials didn't reach on time. Or it could be the case where, you know what, somebody else gone back and said, you know, you think it's only a slight delay. And the slight delay in turn, what happens is their production line stops for a few hours. Now you may think it's few hours, but for them it's a big deal because there are other dependencies that are built around it. Or maybe, you know what, when they stop a certain line, for them to restart that line takes a lot more hours. So the larger impact is much more. We don't understand that. Or in the case of, somebody also mentioned to me that when they had actually sent a code, they were supposed to, from an IT company, they had promised to send something over on Monday morning, right? So this guy had arranged the contractors from his side to make sure that they're able to go back and do that bit. And when he came back on Monday morning, what they are supposed to have delivered, they didn't deliver. And what happened? He had in turn arranged 3 contractors, paying them about $1,500 a day. And suddenly he's sitting on $5,000 of cost, which he cannot account for, which he finds it difficult to go back. Now he gets blasted by his manager, asking him, you know what, don't even know how to manage a supplier or a vendor. Have you ever thought what they are going through? Have you ever realized that they're being questioned of their ability to make judgment calls about their decision-making skills, or the fact that they have not done, been able to get the kind of results they want from the customer? Have you ever felt what it is to be on the other side? Sometimes we don't realize it, right? And to truly realize it, we need to be able to let go of whatever these so-called tags that we have of, you know what, my company. So, unga company view in the path, now you will never truly get the other customers' view, because you will always talk from a point of view of how it is for your company, how it is that I can defend it, how is that I can validate it, how is that I can justify it, and it will simply not mean that you understand what they're going through. Now, when I tell you this, I'm sure all of you, some of you are already thinking, Varghese, if I do that, then what is my role? I'm sitting there. Will I be giving it away? Will I be losing control of the situation? So let me first put that to rest. Empathy does not mean you agree. Empathy is not agreement. Empathy simply says, I'm willing. As a matter of fact, I'm choosing to be on the other side so that I gain new perspectives. It doesn't mean that I agree to whatever you say. So you don't have to be worried that if I become empathetic, doesn't mean I'll have to agree to something. No, you don't have to. It simply means I'm willing to go back to the other side, see the world from how they see it, understand what they're going through, and then I come back on this side of the world, and then I make my decision to what is better. And most people, when they do that, they actually realize that it has been a lot better for them. They're able to go back and gain insights which they never thought before. They didn't realize the impact of some of the delays in that and some of the reasons. And you know what, most interestingly, some of the feedback that I received is people, when they have gone on the other side, and I'll give you another example, right? Possibly something which all of these, many of them are real stories I'm talking about. I know I don't want to quote the customer names here. Now they had some delay in delivery of goods. Now the moment they sat on the call with the customer, the moment he said, immediately they said, you know what, see those 2 days, one was because there was a strike, and the other thing was because there was flooding in whatever, Villipuram or whatever it is, the place, it doesn't matter. Well, that's what they said to the customer because they thought that was right? There was flooding, and which is true, there was flooding, and there was also a strike, some transport strike for a day. Now, once they decided to move on the other side and see only the customer view, remove the complete shoes or the hat of your company, now suddenly they're sitting this side and asking themselves, you know what, okay, what is my vendor or supplier saying today? He's telling me that he had a transport strike, and now suddenly the other guys, when you sit in the other side, you wonder, well, the transport strike was announced well in advance, right? So it wasn't a sudden strike, okay, which means they knew well in advance that there's going to be a strike, which means they could have done something about it. Flooding doesn't happen overnight. It's not some insta flooding here. In today, government is so efficient enough, they're able to evacuate, in some cases, thousands of people. And you're saying that you couldn't move your material for me because the floods were supposed to come in. When you go on the other side, sometimes you realize the excuses you give, the reasons you give, as a matter of fact, you yourself will not accept them if it came from your own supplier or vendor? Have you thought about it? The next time you sit for a customer meeting and you're going to give them some reasons, ask yourself, will you accept this reason from your supplier or vendor? And in most cases, we realize we will not. And that's the beauty about it, right? Now, to see that, you need to truly be on the other side. And that is why the importance of being able to remove one's shoes, remove one's perceptions, remove one's needs, one's desires, one's worldview, one's filter of how I look at things, so that I be able to completely go on the other side. That is the reason why we need to have empathy in our communication. Now, having said this, having said what it is, how do we go about it, right? How do we go about building empathetic communication? Now, if you go back to the definition, I talked about three things that were there. The first was an action of understanding. We talked about being aware and sensitive, and the last about thoughts and feelings. If I take the first one, let's start about understanding. How do I gain more understanding, or how do I show an action of understanding to my customer? And possibly the simplest way to do that is by just simply keeping quiet on your customer call and allowing your customer to talk about it. Allow him to vent out all that he wants to say. Hasn't it happened in your case, that you're sitting at home, you're planning to do something, and then suddenly you heard that something happened at home, and you told your son, let's say, not to do something, and he did exactly that, and then the whole thing just went for a toss, and you're sitting there just waiting to go back and tell him, you know what, hey, I told you the panna there, and all of that, the feeling of anger, emotion, maybe disappointment, everything waiting there, and you walk in home and you just want to tell it out, right? Your customer is no different too. He's possibly going through a similar kind of emotion based on what had happened, based on his own expectations of things would be, and not finding that when he comes back and he's sitting on the call, he wants to vent it out. He wants to be able to tell it out. And different customers express it differently. Some of them through anger, some of them through disappointment, some of them through sadness. But remember, that's their ability to showcase their handling of pressure. So keep that in also mind. If somebody is angry as a customer, understand that that's possibly the only way he knows how to deal with the pressure that you created for him, right? It is not something that has happened on its own. It's something which you have created. So understand that before you get into this call, right? So be willing to go back and truly understand. For that, take some action, which is allow them to speak. Don't interrupt them. Now, what happens? Imagine, like I said, going back to the same example, the moment you start telling him, you knew all the reasons why it didn't work, right? And you're convinced about it. That's your worldview. You go back and suddenly your son says, the moment he says that, you actually get even more angry, because you think, what are you? You're doubting my wisdom now, you're doubting my judgment call, you're doubting me, or you don't believe in me, or what is it? You don't want to even hear what I've got to say. That's exactly what happens to your customers too. The moment you sit on a call, and I've seen this happen, I've been part of calls, I've been also part of sample calls when people do with customers, when they do with the customers. The moment customers start saying, you know what, that particular thing happened, and immediately, no, it is not because of that, it is because of this. Don't do that. Don't interrupt them. Allow them to go back and tell, because this is a context of creating empathy there, right? It is all about empathetic communication there. So allow them to completely speak what they want to speak, right? Don't interrupt them. Once you do that, the next best thing you can do is to ask them how it impacted them. Now, this will work especially if you're dealing with employees on the other side. That means they're also paid employees who are sitting in various roles. It could be manager for purchase, or it could be a stores person, or it could be a general manager sales, or whatever be the so-called title designation, right? Somebody on the other side. It's a wonderful thing to ask them how bad it impacted them. And more than to ask them, I tell people, you tell them that I understand, or I'm aware that I know we have put you in a difficult position. Just you telling that we have put you in a difficult position, or we have put you in a challenging situation, you know what, that itself will completely shift the way they look at it. Because you know what, they will begin to realize that at least you're making an effort to understand what the pain is. So when you get a chance, ask them that, how bad was it? I mean, did it get really bad? And the kind of questions you can ask will also depend on the kind of relationship that you already share with them. Because you cannot ask every question to everybody. So put a little context there, be real to what the relationship is and the space that you people share, so that you can ask them what happened, right? Now, for someone I know very well, and I know that he's a mid-level guy or a reasonably senior guy, I could ask him, no, what, hey, really bad, right? You must have got shouted at. He says, yeah, no, the guy was really upset and angry. He can relate. Now, sometimes when you ask these things, there is a possibility that they may not share everything, and that's okay. It's okay. Maybe he doesn't want to share at that point. Maybe he feels at that moment it is not what he wants to talk about. Respect that. Some cases, there might be silence too. And silence is also an indication of the fact that that's where your relationship is. And you would see this a lot more actually with your family members. Have you ever tried going and asking a son or a grown-up son or a daughter what happened in nature? And they say, "Onne illappa." You know what they mean by saying that sometimes? They are trying to sometimes tell you that I don't think you will understand. Am I clear? When they are being silent or they say, "Onne illa," it could be that I don't want to share with you because you will judge me. I don't want to share with you because I don't think you will understand what I'm trying to say. Or I don't want to share with you because you will come up and give me a gyan and I don't want to hear your gyan. You'll see that a lot of family members, they will not share with you. And remember, if you have children, I tell people, fix this now, because if you don't fix this now, they will never learn how to share with you. And it's so difficult to change them much later in life. So break the ice there, go back and do it. And I'll talk about that a little more later as we come back specifically about family, right? So if your customer is not sharing, it simply means that space is still not, the rapport is not there. That relationship is not where it is, where he's comfortable sharing, or he doesn't completely believe that you truly understand what he's going through or what he will be going through in this condition, right? That's what it is. So the third part of that is to be able to go back and tell them that you mean something, right? And I've got what you said. And how do we do that? You do that by acknowledging what they said and to paraphrase what they said. That means it is not to completely verbally repeat all the things they said. It is to paraphrase and use phrases which they have used to quickly summarize something that was the true essence of it. Now, usually I don't like to use the word summarize, because what happens, summarize gives you the choice to use whatever words that you want to give your understanding of it. I'm saying paraphrasing because I want you to use exactly the words that the customer has used, and that makes a difference. So when you're dealing with a customer and the customer is telling you that, you know what, it was a Varghese, it was a nightmare to deal with your service desk. And imagine you come back and tell him that because you understood that and you're telling him, yeah, I know you mentioned it was difficult to deal with my service desk. You know what? Difficult to deal and a nightmare to deal is a world of a difference for your customer, because he is the one who experienced that. So don't think by shifting the word in your worldview, difficult is okay, it means the same. Well, it's not the same, because the perception that comes with that word is very different. For me, a nightmare is something, oh, that was, difficult could be, okay, chalta hai. So what happens when you don't use the words which they have used? They feel, again, you're trying to change context. They feel that you're not truly understood because you don't get my pain. You know what, I was suffering. And you will say something like, no, what I think it must have been challenging for you. No, it is not challenging. I was suffering. So use the words that your customers have used, because then the connections there are much better, because now we relate that you use the words that he's used. Not that you're conscious, I'm saying this as part of helping you, train you, or to help you in the process. Your customer doesn't know this, right? So when you sit with him, what happens is that what he receives from you, when you use the words that he used, is that he will be able to feel a lot better, because you know what, you're saying the right words with the words which he expressed how he felt. Now, this will allow you to create understanding. What about the second? Being aware and sensitive. Being aware and sensitive is very simple. Actually, it's not difficult, just that we don't do it enough. Our face is a myriad of thousands of expressions. If you look carefully at people's faces, you realize that there is so much that our face will tell based on how they feel. You know, especially moms are very good at it. You've seen that, right? You come home and they look at the child and say, something is wrong, right? The moment they look at them, they know that something is wrong. Why is that? The boy has not even opened his mouth and said something. But he's able to go back and relate to it. She's able to feel it. Why? Because she can see the small nuances, small shifts in the facial expressions, that something is wrong. Something is not right. In our school and Sunday, whatever, right? Because, and she even brings the context beautifully, right? Sunday, in the teacher, she's able to come back and look. Why? Because she's able to see those small nuances in the face. So customer's face also is a giveaway, right? When he talks, there is so much of pain sometimes, so much of suffering, so much of disappointment, so many emotions that come through the face. So I tell people, watch them. Why? Because you want to be able to be in their space. You want to truly understand what they're feeling. And sometimes people may not say all that they're saying. They may hold it back because for whatever reasons, various reasons. And if you want to truly gauge what is happening, you should do that. And this will work wonderfully well, even when you're dealing with your team members or with your family members, right? Especially with your team members too, because they may want to say something and they don't feel like saying it. And if you have been very aware that you realize there is still something that's unsaid, there is still something that's not been told. That is what I call as, reading between the lines of what they're trying to say. And when you do that, I think that connect gets even more fantastic. The second thing you can focus on is the tone. Now here I'm talking about the tone, not so much about get to the minute details of it. It is simply to be able to identify what is that tone talking about. Is it disappointment? Is it anger? Is it disgust? Is it feeling of helplessness? Now, why not so much to discover that? It's simply to be able to reciprocate that. Now, imagine someone is having a scenario, he comes back. Now, he's had a great weekend, wonderful time, and he's coming all excited to test a new product, which you're supposed to have released it. And he's all eagerly waiting to go and tell his boss that, what, hey guys, today everything is going to go well, we're getting it ready. And he had a wonderful time on the weekend, and he's just waiting to share with his colleagues about all the fun he had on the weekend. And the moment he walks into the room, something goes wrong. And then what happens, right? He hears it about his boss sitting and shouting at him about the fact that the delivery has not happened. And for a moment, he just sits and thinks, you know what, I was planning so many things. I wanted to share all this, and today that's all gone. What happened? There's a moment of disappointment there, right? It is not so much about anger at that point, right? Maybe there's a lot of disappointment about the things that didn't happen. Now, when he's saying that in that tone, imagine you say, yeah, I understand. You don't understand because your tone doesn't say that you understand. So what do? See if you can go into a level of disappointment yourself. You know what it is to be disappointed. We all have been disappointed in our lives, no doubt about it, right? What if you could go back to the moment when you were disappointed? You thought something was going to happen, and then you walked into that room and your manager said something else, and you walked out feeling, and you know that feeling, right? Now what happens? My tone has changed. Now I can talk to him, saying, no, what? Yeah, I get it. I know I'm disappointed in something. Why? Because now I'm in that feeling of it. Because I know what it is to also be disappointed in my life. So what it does, it makes the communication a lot more better. Like I said, until you about a lot more empathetic, a lot more compassionate, right? That's what it does. The last is also about observing body language. When you're talking to your customer and you find that your customer is feeling sad, people give away those signs, right? It could be that, you know what, he just leans his face here. You've seen people sometimes when they think they have their hands like this. They may not even realize that they're just thinking maybe something is worrying them, something is bothering them. Well, this is the way your customer is. I'm not saying to do an exact copy, but if you can bring something closer to that side. Imagine when your customer is talking, saying, you know what, yeah, no, last week it just happened, but yeah, it was difficult. Yeah, and I'm sitting here saying like, yeah, tell me, yeah, I understand. Tell me, what do you think is going to happen? Right? That's an absolute disconnect in the way I'm sitting there or the way I'm showing myself to you. Now imagine if I could also be like this, saying, no, what? No, I get it. You know, maybe my head bent down. What happens? You are building connect much better. Now, all of these things, remember, will work absolutely well with your team members too. And most importantly, also with your family members, just that we don't take the effort to do it. If you're talking to your daughter and she seems to be upset and she's talking this way, there's no point saying, Yennachu will just not open them up. Instead of saying, you also bend down, lean forward, and suddenly realize what she feels connected because she sees a body language that says that I feel what you're feeling. May not be exactly the same, but I'm willing to do that. That's what it takes. Now, we talked about this. We talked about understanding. We talked about what it takes to be aware and be sensitive. And finally, I want to talk about thoughts and emotions. Now, what do I mean by thoughts and emotions? Possibly the best way to do it is to actually do a small demonstration. What I'd like you to do is, I'd like you to take a moment and think of a particular incident which you had with your customer or a customer that you're dealing with, a unhappy customer that you're dealing with currently. Or a scenario that could have happened in the past where you went into a call, and I just want you to be fully involved in this process. Now, when I ask this, what I'm really trying to say is I want you to truly be immersed in this experience. And the only way you gain from the experience is to be completely involved. So can I request all of you to close your eyes, right? And allow me to tell you a scenario, and you can change that. You don't have to only look at that scenario. You can modify that to your context. Ungalora situation ku neenga adha maathikalam, right? I may talk about, maybe something which happened to a guy in the US. It can be for you. It can be something which has happened to a customer who is, near your hometown, or it can be about one of your large customers, right? It doesn't matter. You bring the relevant context and the detailing to what is appropriate here. So if I talk about saying that he came back from a football match, it doesn't have to be a football match for you. It could be something that he was watching a movie and coming back. So feel free to add parameters to it or context to it that is most appropriate. But truly take the case of real life example of something that happened, or about a customer who you need to deal with in the future, or something that you're going with now. All right. So if you kindly close your eyes for a moment and completely relax yourself, I want you to take a few breaths, not be disturbed by anything else that's happening in your house, not be disturbed by all the sounds and the noises that are there. And I want you to just completely relax in this experience. Now, as you close your eyes, I want you to imagine your customer, this person who is maybe your client manager, your client partner, could be your client stores in charge or a purchase manager. It doesn't matter. It could be the owner, it could be whoever it is. That guy is gone on the weekend. He's had a wonderful time with his family and with his friends, whole bunch of things that he had done on the weekend, exciting weekend. And now he's getting ready to come back on a Monday morning. He's all excited because once he comes on Monday morning, you are bringing him, you was going to send him the materials required. And this is something which he has done very well. He feels very proud that he's able to get it from the supplier or from you as a vendor. And he's all excited because it's all falling in place. Everything seems to be perfectly aligned. And he's just waiting to go back and have a great lunch after the start, once he's sorted all this out. He comes into the office, happy, swinging his arms, feeling very jolly, listening to music, completely immersed in this wonderful experience. And as he walks into the office, he sees this manager's or his big boss's cabin, his big boss and a couple of other senior leaders. And the moment he sees that, it just gets this feeling that something is wrong. And within 2 minutes, he's called immediately to the room. And the moment he enters the room, all excited, he suddenly gets blasted by him saying, "What the hell are you doing here? What happened to the material? Why hasn't it come? That whole thing is stopped. We're unable to do that." And he's like, "No, they told me they will send me." "What do you mean they told you they will send you, right?" Think of the words that they must have used, right? Hear the words in your ears, all the shouting, the angry words, the language that you must have used completely to shatter him, questioning his credibility, questioning his capability, sitting there and slicing him apart. அந்த அளவுக்கு அவரை திட்டி என்னத்த பண்ற நீலாம் வேலைக்கு வர எதுக்கு உங்களாம் சம்பளம் கொடுக்கணும். Imagine those words that are coming out. And as he walks out of the room, "Go and fix it," he says. And as he walks out of the room, imagine how he must be feeling for that moment, right? Completely a sense of maybe helplessness, anger, pain, the whole thing like broken dreams, on the bottle of the money, just everything seems to have suddenly shattered. He walks with his head bent down. He sees his colleagues are looking at him. He feels ashamed. He feels bad that, man, how can these guys ditch me? How could they not do this? He goes to his room. This whole world has changed in that one very moment. He's no longer what he walked in. This is possibly the state he is in when he's possibly picking up a phone call and trying to talk to you. Be there. Just be there for a moment and feel it. Feel those emotions in your body. Maybe some of you are already feeling the disgust, the anger, the pain, the sensation that are flowing because you're able to now truly relate to what he's going through. I would like to kindly unmute the audience. You can open your eyes. I'm just opening up the floor to hear some of your experiences. What happened when you did this? What did you feel? What did you hear? Or what did you see? Can someone
I think
unmute all of them, please?
I think first of all, you know, uh, as a person who is receiving those scoldings, for example, I would not be knowing that he went for a family tour or how he spent his weekend and all. So anyway, but the first morning and the Monday morning, the way he's getting tensed is because uh, it I cannot make decision just because of that particular Monday morning, because I think we both, as a boss and my subordinate, we have been working in that organization for some time. So I know him, I know how he is. So based on that, what he has, spoke, on which matter he has, blasted on me or anybody in my team or something. So I can relate with both. How is this past, approach, and what is the topic he's talking, and in that topic, in which level of performance we are. So we have to relate all these three things, and particularly as you said, listening is very important. Even though he cannot kill me or he cannot eat me anyway. So definitely, listening is not giving up or putting my head down. It's not like that.
Sure.
So I can listen.
Arun,
So
how was your experience when you did this activity? உங்க மனசுல என்ன இருந்தது? நீங்க பண்ணும்போது கண்ண மூடி பண்ணீங்களா? What did you feel? Were you able to feel something?
Yeah, I felt like you have said a story, so I was immersed myself in that story.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So what did you feel? You could feel his pain. You could feel his suffering.
Yeah.
I think that's all. That is all the objective was, right? For that moment when you're fully immersed, feeling that. Anybody else? Thank you so much, Arun. Anybody else?
I feel my energy level gone down, depressed.
Absolutely,
Dejected.
right? Yeah. Anybody else? So just think about it, right? I just told you an hypothetical story. I said just imagine, and you can now relate. Like somebody said, you can even feel the shift in energy, right? Of what you must have thought just about a story about something, even though it didn't happen to you. Just possibly imagining that is able to bring about that level of difference in your physiology. And I think it's sometimes good, because when you have that state, you may appreciate your customer a lot better. You may be able to relate to them what they are going through a lot better. Now, this is something which you can possibly do before you even get into the call. If you know there has been a major goof up, and be in that moment to truly see what you must be going through, right? You can add, like I said, you can add your own creativity to it. And in some cases, more realistic based on the actual individual. Right now, I talked about having a good time. You may not have a good time. You might be maybe a family man is happy spending time in his house. It doesn't matter. Those details don't matter. It's about eliciting those feelings so that you feel that. Sometimes you can even do it in the call as he's talking about it. Right now, maybe you're the leader there. You possibly others are directly listening to. He's not specifically talking to you, but you are one of the senior leaders sitting there, and you need to be able to respond to some of these things later in the call. You could try to get into that feel, that state. What I'm trying to do is to make you get into that feeling of what you must be going through in that very moment. This is a fantastic exercise. Whenever you get a chance, you can practice. And this is not just with your customer. I keep telling you people, right? You can also practice this when you're dealing with difficult team members. Team members are going through pain. Imagine somebody who's lost someone COVID times. Somebody has lost someone. You want to go back and console him or talk to him. You can possibly imagine what it was when you lost someone close to you, right? And suddenly you realize that the whole feelings have changed. For a moment, you go into that moment. Some of you may even have tears running up their eyes, because suddenly they think about, when maybe you lost your dad, you lost your mom, someone close to you. Now the feeling is very different. What does it do? It allows you to relate to them a lot more better. So instead of coming out and saying, we're just having a great talk out and say, or I want to go meet him because he's lost his dad, you will not be able to shift that state. So a better way to do it is for a moment to imagine being in a state similar to that. Not that you may have lost, but somewhere you would have lost people. And then when you go to that room, the way you represent yourself, the entire body language, the feeling that you have will be very different. than just walking in and saying, no, let me just go past my condolences and come back. This is what great people do. People who have made empathy an art in their life, they are people who consciously make a choice to make a difference to every encounter that they have with people. That's why you see some people are saying, you know what, this beautiful thing about Mother Teresa, they say that in whatever situation people have met her, they've always found her as someone who so much shows that she cares for people. Phenomenal level of care and concern for people. It doesn't matter who it is, it doesn't matter what the context is. Could have been on the street, could have been in the house, could have been at 10 o'clock, could have been at 4 o'clock. She's able to, what she does in that process is being able to continuously be in a state, in her case, to be able to do that. The least we can do is to be able to get into that state where you're able to feel what the customer is feeling, the kind of thoughts, the kind of pain, kind of disappointment, kind of anger, frustration about why it wasn't done, so that you can connect to what they're with. That is what is important. Right? If you go back and do this right, you will find that you're making a world of difference in the way you're dealing with your customer. This is what I started off by saying 3 parts: the understanding, being aware and sensitivity, thoughts and feelings. But the last part of what we talked about in the context of compassion was mitigation, the desire to do it. Now, I'm sure you understand why you need to do it, because if you want to make a difference, you simply have to do it. How do you do it? You can do what best is suitable for you. But the difference is when you do these first few steps, when you do it this way, the kind of mitigation you will look at would be a lot different. And in some cases, you may even want to go back and, let's say you're on a call with your customer and this happens. Now you truly get a sense of what happened. If you were asked to come prepared for mitigation, even in the call, then come prepared for it. But be willing to be able to make changes impromptu as required based on the context when it has shifted. If you feel that the pain was more, the kind of difficulty you didn't realize, and you think you can do a lot more, maybe in some cases, I even tell people, ask the customer if you could take a short break and regroup, or ask him if you could have another meeting to come back and talk about this. Why? Because suddenly you realize the pain you have caused them, the difficulty you put them through, the challenges that they've had because of what you have not done or what you didn't do right was a lot more than what you initially assumed. And maybe you can come up with an even more better mitigation plan, which means your customer is going to be a lot happier. His experience is going to be very changed. It's redefined. And most importantly, you also walk out there feeling that, what, you've done a great job as a leader, as a business owner. Now, I want to close this particular topic in the context of customer by reminding you that your customer is only a label. It is a generalization or a term that we use to describe somebody who's on the other side. In some cases, the generalization is good because when we say customer, it comes with a lot of so-called perks, a lot of benefits, a lot of things that we would do as standard, right? You take IT company. Whenever they say customer is coming, the whole welcoming is very different, right? From column to garlands and a whole bunch of stuff, right? If you're coming after 3 years, nobody's going to care about it. They're going to come and ask you where are the sweets, right? So generalization in that context is sometimes good because it provides for at least a minimum level of a service or a standard. But the flip side, the other side of it is when we generalize the customer, we forget the fact that your customer is nothing more than another individual who's just sitting on the other side. Someone who's like you, someone who's got his own set of problems, someone who's got his own way of dealing with pressure and situations, someone who's got his own set of limitations, his own set of capabilities, and not a single customer is ever the same. So the flip side to generalization is that we lose context. We lose to identify the person. We only see them as a customer. So my request is from today onwards, when you're dealing with a customer, remove the title of a customer and put that person in place there, and then you will be able to see them a lot better. You will be able to then recognize what makes them different, what is it about them that's unique, and be able to go back and understand the small details about them so that, you can communicate with them a lot better. Because that's what is important. Remember, everyone is different and every customer is different. So there is no one way of dealing with all of your customers because they're not customers. They are somebody sitting on the other side. So have that sensitivity, and then you will find that, you can manage them better. The last is accepting them for who they are. They are who they are. Your job is not to train them and fix them. Your job is to deal with them in the context of your business or your work. So accept them for who they are. The moment you accept them, you will learn that you can deal with them a lot better. I actually tell people, don't be surprised if each customer, each so-called person demands different things from you, because you know what? That is their worldview. Because remember, everyone is looking at the world through their own filter, through their own glasses. And what they see is not what you see. So if you want to truly redefine customer experience, you got to consciously make an effort to once in a while remove the tag off, especially in situations where there is a problem or there is challenges, and then look at them as an individual who need that focused attention, the care, the compassion, so that the difference will be phenomenal. That's what is important. Now, when I talked about this, when I was just relating to a story that I remember hearing it. Now, the interesting thing about stories now, you can bring different kinds of learnings to it. And I love to deal with stories as much as possible. So there's this monk and two monks. One is a very senior monk and the other is, let's say, is a junior monk. They're coming from their mountaintop. Mala, they have the temple. They're only there. They never come out from there. Only for extreme, some situations, rare situations, they have to come down. They come down to the village, do what they need to do and go back. Now, these monks were supposed to be, absolute bachelors. As a matter of fact, they don't even look at women. That's the kind of setup that they have there. So it so happens that one day, this senior monk and the junior monk were coming down. And as they were coming, there's a small stream that they need to cross. Usually there is not, the stream is dry. And when they reached the place, unfortunately, they found that it had rained a few days back. And so there was little water, maybe till about knee deep of water. And they were about to cross it. And suddenly they see there's this wonderful lady from the village who's very beautifully well-dressed. Maybe she was going for some function or whatever it is. And so she's standing on this side of the bank and wondering how to cross, right? Because if she's going to cross, she's got all those stuff on her legs and decorations and clothes, and she looks at it and it's like, the next moment, the senior monk just walks up to her, just bows down to her, lifts her in his hands and crosses with her in his arms. And the moment he crosses, he puts her down and she thanks him and she goes off. They continue the journey. Sometime later, the monk, the young monk finds it, how is it possible? We are supposed to do nothing with women, and this guy lifted a lady, and so he comes back and says, you know what, like I said, there are beautiful interpretations for this. One is to say that you still are holding on to the I've already dropped it. But the point that I wanted to bring here is to say that at that moment, the compassion that he felt, seeing in her situation, what it meant is it didn't matter what he was holding on to, because he knew that what he was holding on to was always there. And in that moment, he was willing to take her and put her there because he had nothing else in his mind other than absolutely pure compassion. Well, I'm sure many of you have these sporadic moments of compassion in your lives also. What if you could do that more consistently? What if you could do that more often? And then what happens is that every interaction with you will be a phenomenal experience for them. Now, is this only to do with customers? Are customers the only people that we deal with? Not at all, right? We deal with our team members. We also deal with another important bunch of people, and that's our family members. How do we deal? What is empathy in the context of team members? Have you ever thought about it? What is empathy? Now, I'm not going to go back and explain the whole context of empathy in the context of team members. But what I'm going to do is throw upon certain situations for you, certain scenarios, and maybe you will connect back to that. It must have happened in your life. It must have happened in your workplace. And I'm only hoping that you take something back from it and go and apply it. What is empathy for your team member is something as simple as when your team member comes and asks for leave, right? Instead of just saying no, take a moment and ask him what happened. Why is he wanting to take leave? Now, some people may do that. And the moment he says, he may say something, what you may think is as trivial as I'm just saying, I'm just picking up an example. It doesn't matter what, just an example, right? And the moment you hear that, right, what it hits you, oh, that's not very important. You know why? Because the reason why you should not take leave seems to be far more important with you. And what do? You end up immediately saying, you know what, sorry, leave alone. That's it, right? Now I'm telling you this again, all the more let me deal with this. Once again, reiterating, empathy doesn't mean I agree to him or I agree to what he's asking for. It simply means I'm willing to go on the other side of it. And what does it mean to go on the other side? Is to go back and establish importance. Now, why did you say no at that point, right? Because you felt the reason which he said was not as important as the reason which you felt that he should not take leave. Now, who defines that? You are defined it. Based on what? Based on your definition of what is important for you. Have you tried to understand what is important for them? So the best way to do that, especially with team members, is to ask them, why is that important? And suddenly he will tell you, illa sir, in a family, you know, it's all these years, nobody's been able to have a child. There have been so many, you know, they become pregnant and then everything goes away. So for us, it's a miracle child, sir. The first child. Now what happens? Context has changed, right? Now you realize why it is important for him, because for him, his sister's child is a miracle child, which you may not have connected to earlier. And the reason you're able to connect to it simply by asking the question, why was it important for him? Now what happens? You still make it, you have a choice, but possibly you may see it in a different light and maybe be willing to see how to make it work for him, because suddenly you realize it's actually very important for him. They have no children in the family and this is the first child. So something what you thought is a trivial thing, like suddenly becomes very important. Or it's about someone telling you that they want leave because they want to do their 17th year, or 17th and you may be wondering 17th and and then you go back and ask him, and then suddenly he says, you know what? Promise first 20 years. So I just feel, see the difference. Now it is important for him. May not be important for you, but for him, the promise he made to his mother that he will do whatever happens for the first 20 years means a lot more to him. And in all likelihood, he would still take leave, whether he give it or not in some cases, because he's willing to. For him, that's really more important. So when you deal with team members, be willing to ask them these questions, right? I was working with a company in Mandalore, and it's a manufacturing company. They have a furnace there. And interestingly, on the particular division, in the furnace division, there are a lot of people who have been quitting. And one of the complaints was the fact that the temperature is too high. That's what the complaint was being. Now, many of the senior people there are people who have come from, you know, typically manufacturing setup. They come from being a supervisor, whatever, assistant manager. They have also dealt with it in years before. They may have managed it. So their typical answer is, temperature setting has not changed. So you know what? Don't worry about it. It's all the same. Just get them to get on with work and find out better people. So they were quitting. People from North India will come, and many of them will quit and go, right? And we had the session as one of the parts of the program I was doing. And then this guy felt, okay, you know what, let me go and see what is it. Now, most cases, what happens as a manager or as a leader there, you will walk into the furnace, sometimes spend a few minutes, and then you go back. Nothing more than that, right? Can somebody go on mute? I think somebody is talking about it. So what happened is they went back, and usually they spend only about 5 or 10 minutes. Can you mute all of them, please, Gopi? Thank you. So what happened? They went back and he said, you know what, let me spend some time. So he went and actually spent 2 hours with them there. And you know what, suddenly realized it's actually unusually hot. It's much hotter. But remember, when he sat in his cabin and he was thinking, I know what this hot is, he was only talking from a memory of something that happened years back, not necessarily what's happening today. And the moment he actually went and spent 2 hours there and the place, the way they work, just being completely with them, he realized something was off. And you know what they found? It's not so much there, right? The furnace temperature, all that was very similar. But what we forget sometimes is environmental shifts are happening. People who have been in Chennai for a long time will realize that Chennai has become a lot hotter than what it was 10 years back. So even the few degrees in increase in temperature was making them feel like it's possibly 5 degrees more in an already hot place. Now what happened? They went back and they were able to go back. They did something about it. They created some provisions for them so that they can feel a lot better. What happened? The attrition came down. This is what happens many times when your team member come back and talk to you. And the other thing that you find is your team member will come back and say, "No, what, I'm not able to get this productivity from this mission." Immediately your answer is what? For many of you have come down the cycle. I know, I've done it. You can definitely take it. It's not a problem at all, right? That's what you go back and tell them. No, what you forget? Well, it's not the same anymore. When you took production from that particular mission, or when you were managing it, things would have been different, and things have changed now. So what do? Ask them the question, what is causing the difficulty? What is the challenge you're facing? And then suddenly he says, "You know what, sir, help us." No, I'm not able to get much from them. Oh dear, why? What is the problem? Well, they cannot lift. They're only able to bring so many pieces. They're putting and going. So times have changed. 10 years back, you could shout at people, you could abuse them in manufacturing. I even hear people say that they've been abused. But today it will not work. You try telling a youngster, calling names, using foul language, within few hours he'll walk. Worst case, you might take a YouTube video and post it saying this is how the company is today. That's how much things have changed today. You cannot deal with them the way they were 10 years back. So be real to what is the situation. So what, go back and find out how it has changed. Managing teams today, not at all is not the same. Don't think because you manage teams and you have people come back and say, "No, I also used to manage." Sir, you used to manage teams which were different because the timestamps were different. 10 years back, life was not the same. Look at our own lives today. Today's youngsters are possibly one of the most, I would say, high energy, capable people, but at the same time, also possibly one of the most distracted bunch of people. And then what I'm talking about, right? This beautiful device called a mobile phone, smartphones. 10 years back, there was no smartphones. Possibly you'll get an SMS once in a while, and that also is limited. Today, your team members or youngsters are sitting on high-end devices where they pay 200 rupees for unlimited data, think through, on a 4G connection, where they can watch anything. They don't need the company internet anymore. They can sit and watch wherever they want, whenever they want. And there's a whole bunch of programs, a whole bunch of games, and a whole bunch of opportunities to connect with people in different ways, right? And they are being bombarded continuously with a whole bunch of advertisements, informations to get their time and attention. So are they distracted? Oh, definitely they're distracted. Is it still the same? No, it's not the same, right? So the way you need to deal with them is going to be very different. You cannot expect to say that, that's what they will do. One of the biggest challenges in IT industry is productivity. People spend, the average, they say, if somebody spends 10 hours in the IT company, they don't possibly work productively for more than 6 to 7 hours. That's the amount of time wasted that happens. But you know what? The industry seems to work that way because it's got its own set of working, but that's what it is. So people are okay to stay for 10 hours, even though they know they only actually are absolutely productive for 7 hours. So a rare occasion you find people who are so focused that they need to do it. So as things change, definitely things have changed. They are not the same as before. So that sensitivity needs to be there when you deal with your teams, when you're dealing with today's youngsters. It could be something as simple as food. Earlier, you provide food for your employees. You know what? They're extremely happy just because you provided food. Now, I remember when I was working my first job in manufacturing, one day in a week, we get non-veg. I think we get chicken or something, right? And it used to be like, wow, we need chicken. And I can see the whole bunch of people all eagerly going early that day for lunch. That is when they'll have chicken. You don't want to go on the end of it, right? That would have made you happy back then. Try telling that to today's youngsters saying, I'll put chicken once a week. They don't care about that food anymore. That's not what's making them happy. Times have changed. People have changed. So if you have to be empathetic, you have to be in their world. There's no point saying, this is how I was. This is how it was before. Well, it cannot be that way. So what is happening? Smarter companies are adapting. They are making those changes. Now, they may not provide the shift, but what they're doing, today's generation don't mind paying for it. So what are they doing? They're creating options for them. In some companies, I know they have created additional counters. Other than the standard food they provide for, they have created additional counters, allowing people to run stalls inside their premises so that those who want can go and pay and eat whatever they want. So there's no restriction. The possibility is endless today for them, right? That's the kind of shit that is happening. So when you deal with team members today, remember that, it is not the same. Their kind of fears, the kind of problems they face are very different. Now, I was doing for a multinational company, one of the top 4 companies in India, an IT company. And one of the questions and one of the areas that we talk about is dealing with fear. Now, when I asked them, what is your greatest fear? Right now, this guy is about 26. He must be about 26 years old. Most of them are youngsters. I asked him to put, this guy tells me, Varghese, my biggest fear is marriage. Now, for a second, I was like, marriage, kalyanam. I said, yes. No, we look back. We think, when you get married, people will settle down. That used to be the mindset some years back, right? And he tells me, no, I'm actually scared. I said, you really mean that you're scared of marriage? I mean, that's your fear? You're fearful of marriage? He said, yes. I said, why do you say that? He said, well, over the last couple of years, I've had at least quite a few of my friends getting married. 50% of them say they're unhappy in their marriage. Another 30% of them are already divorced. Less than 2 years, more than 30 to 40% are divorced. I'm scared to get married. Now I can brush it off saying, oh, come on, yeah, what is this? Give them some gyan, saying, yeah, that's not what happens. But you know what? That's not what they want here. That is their reality. That is their fear. That is their world that they are in. It doesn't matter whether I like it or not. It doesn't matter whether I think it's right or wrong. It's about what they feel and what they think about it. And the only way I can connect to him in the context of that particular session was by allowing myself to be immersed in this fear, being in this reality and saying, you know what, okay, this is what you think it is. Okay, let's work back on that. Let's see how we can resolve this, right? And that's the only way you're going to be able to go back and solve issues for your team members is by truly being on their side. And is different today. As a matter of fact, that's why in many companies today, people are very skeptical, especially in new age industries, right? Where a lot of youngsters are there. People are very, very, very careful about picking up senior people. If you're above 45 or 50 years old today, getting into a job where you have to be working with a lot of youngsters is going to be extremely hard simply because they feel that you may not be able to connect to the world, which simply says, you know what, you're not empathetic enough to relate to their problems, to their world. And that is the reality today. So if you want to shift that, you better learn to be more empathetic, which means be in their world. So be in the world of your team members, be in the world of your junior team members and a lot of junior workers today. Understand their world, understand their pressures, understand what excites them, understand what will encourage them, because the challenges that they're looking for is very different from what you used to do. Earlier, if you give them an appraisal once in a year, they might be very happy. But today, in a lot of companies, they have 2 appraisals in a year. They have to have 2 appraisal cycles. Now, I'm not saying that's the only answer. I'm simply saying that you got to relook at what is exciting for them. Giving them a promotion after 5 years would have been great. Today, people are looking to say, you know what, I don't care, give me challenging work. This is what excites me. I like to be challenged. I like to go out and prove that I'm good at it. That is what works for them. So the only way you will relate to is if you're able to go back and connect to them from their world. That's the only way you will see their world. Your team members are also people. Don't forget that, right? They are people. They are wonderful people, unique and different. And just because you have an authority doesn't mean you're right. Just because you have the opportunity to stand there and say, you need them, they will do it. But remember, there might be that what I talked about, that space, and the space gets widened. And if it gets widened, it's going to be hard. I want to finish off with what I said in the beginning, possibly the most important bit for me, and that is your family. What is empathy in the context of family? Have you ever thought about it? All of you tell me that you love your family members. All of you say that you love the people that you're living with. You enjoy you working for your family, you're earning money for your family. So what does empathy mean? Empathy in the family life or in your personal life simply means that when you go back home and your mother asks you saying, how was your job? How was your work today? And you just look at her and say, okay, ma, and you just walk into your room. That is empathy today, to go back and realize what your mother actually meant is to say, I'm asking you, how was your day? So that it will give me a chance for us to talk. And then you will ask me, how was my day? And then I will be able to tell all the things I wanted to share with you, because you know what? In the weekly nobody is talking to me, and I'm waiting for you to come so that at least you will talk to me. That is empathy. Knowing the fact that is exactly what your mom is looking for. Empathy is, you know what, when your 7-year-old child comes and tells you, Appa, na PUBG la, whatever the game la, na at the level point and sollumbodi looking, they say, oh, okay, very good in sollumbala. Go back and understand that little kid is coming to you excited because he thinks you're the father, and for him, you're possibly one of the most important person in his life at that point in his life, and he's excited because he's done something fantastic. And he wants you to ask him, how did you do that? Was it difficult? And he wants to tell all the things that he did. Be a child. Empathy is being in their world. It's not by saying, oh, very good, and going back and looking at what you need to do. Empathy is, you know what, when you come back home and your wife tells you, and you must be thinking, have you ever stopped to ask her, why is it a problem? It's only when you ask them, you realize what their world is. Maybe when you ask them, she will say, daily படுக்கிறதுக்கு நைட்டு 12:30 இதே தான், மண்டே டு சண்டே இதே தான், ஃபுல் ரூட்டீன் வீக் ஆன் வீக். அந்த மத்தியானம் தான் யூஸ்வலா அட்லீஸ்ட் get 1 hour of sleep. இன்னைக்கு அதுவும் முடியல. Now what happened? Now you realize what is happening. That 1 hour of sleep means a lot for her, because that is what energizes her. That is what keeps her going. In today's context, especially in the last 1 year, all of us are working from home. Parents, especially working mothers, are extremely finding it difficult to manage when they have small children. So maybe when they come back and they say, it doesn't mean that she's just palming it off to you. She's trying to tell you that it's been difficult. Right from morning, I've been behind them. They've been asking me stuff, and it is never ending. There seems to be no end to it. Forever somebody is hungry. Forever somebody wants to eat something. Forever they want their attention. And you know what? I have not got any rest. They solla, because you have not been willing to step into their world. Empathy is, when you talk to your tata party, and I have had people come back and say, party கிட்ட எல்லாம் பேசினா ஐயோ போருப்பா, போனா இதை தான் கேட்டுருப்பாங்க, சாப்பிட்டியாடா சாப்பிட்டியான்னு 6 வாட்டி கேட்பாங்க, இதே தான் சொல்லிட்டு இருக்கணும். சார் அந்த பாட்டிக்கு எனக்கு இருக்கா யோசிச்சிருக்கீங்களா? You think that your grandmother is crazy that she's asking you 6 times? The reason she asks you is, why? Because at 70-year-old party is unable to possibly remember that she already asked you. That is empathy. Or the party felt the way you responded, she wasn't sure whether you ate food. Or the fact that, in their generation, when someone comes home, the first thing they want to do is, would you like to eat something? Today people don't connect to it. They come back and tell me, if I want to talk to my appa, அவர் என்ன ஃபுல்லா விவசாயம் பத்தி பேசிட்டு இருப்பார். சார் வேற என்ன பேசுவார் அவரு? What do you expect? Your dad, 65-year-old dad, who's primarily been an agriculturalist or who's been a farmer, what do you think he's going to talk? He's going to talk about GST. He's going to talk about the Euro Cup. He's going to talk about the England series. That's what is important. What is happening in this field, the fact that his pump set is gone. So when he talks to you and he says, my pump set is not working, ask him, that is empathy. That is what is true empathy is. When you go back and realize that they matter, it's not what matters to you, it's what matters to them. That is empathy. When you go back and spend time with your children and child comes and says, oh, today my friend ditched me, unfriend panitan, don't just tell them, what's the big deal? Sir, what's the big deal is for you. For them, it's still a big deal. That's their world. Go into their world. Ask them, what do you feel about it? Be in their world. Just be in their world, and then they will connect. Today, in a lot of homes, parents and children don't even talk. Why? Because we don't create that emotional connect with them, because we are not creating that space for them. So what do? They connect with some strangers on the internet. They are more than happy to share their problem with some stranger on the internet, but they will not open their mouth and tell your own dad and mom what is happening in their lives. Because you people are so caught up in your own world, your needs, my desires, my dreams, health. I want to look good. I want to do this. It's all about me. For a second, when you walk into your homes, think about them. Think about what they are going through. Think about what your parents are going through. Think about what your children are going through. Understand their world. I think that is what will make a world of difference. If you want to be empathetic, genuinely start being concerned for them. When you go home and your wife says, you know what? It simply means I want to talk. And all it takes sometimes is just 10 minutes. All you need to do is just give them the 10 minutes. And all you have to ask them saying, how was your day? Sometimes we don't ask them the question, how was your day? And allow them to rattle off. It's okay. 10 minutes will not change your world. Or if you're absolutely caught up with the time, tell them, give me exactly half an hour, I'll come back. Now, one thing to keep in mind very clearly when it comes to family members and team members is stop giving gyan or advice. We have this tendency that the moment somebody comes and talks to us, we immediately want to start advising them. You know what? They don't want your advice. They don't want to hear how to fix it. They don't want to know நீ எப்படி பண்ணிருக்கணும், நீ அதை பண்ணிருக்கணும், நீ அதை க்ளோஸ் பண்ணிருக்கணும், இதை பண்ணிருக்கணும். சார், உங்க அட்வைஸ் அவங்களுக்கு தேவையில்லை. If they ask you for advice, then give it. So what happens? You're just waiting to tell them how they got done, and they don't want to hear it. And what do? எனக்கு தெரியும், அப்பவே தெரியும். You start judging them, so they will not open your mouth. Most youngsters don't open up and speak, or in most families today, is because what, you judge them the moment they say something wrong. Sir, நீங்களாம் perfect beings, sir. நீங்களாம் தப்பு பண்ணதே கிடையாது. நீங்களாம் mistakes பண்ணதே கிடையாது. நீங்க when you are young, நீங்க ஒண்ணுமே பண்ணலையா? Have you not had mistakes? Have you not done things that were wrong, stupid? I think the same applies to them too. So when you talk to them, have the consideration to the fact that, you know what, that they could also be making just mistakes like what you did. So what do? Ask them, what is that they need? Ask them, what can I do for you? Ask them if they need help. Ask them if they need advice. Only then offer it. Moment your wife comes and tells you, know what, cooker, don't say, and the cooker, sir, no, sir, they were just sharing with you that this is what is. Have a little empathy and just hear them out. Be in their world, understand what happened. Connect to them. That is what is empathy. You know what, I hear the stories of people going happily and saying, you know what, Naanga, Ammaku 10,000 rupee diamond necklace. Sir, unga Ammaku 10,000 rupee diamond necklace தேவையில்லை. ஏன்னா அவங்க எங்கேயும் போட்டுட்டு போக மாட்டாங்க. ஏன்னா எங்கேயாவது ஒரு 10,000 ரூபாய் டைமண்ட் இல்ல 1 லட்சம் ரூபாய் டைமண்ட் நெக்லஸ் போட்டுட்டு வெளியே போகணும்னா நீங்க கூட்டிட்டு போனதான் நடக்கும். அவங்க கேட்ட கோயிலுக்கு 2 வருஷமா அந்த கோயிலுக்கு கூட்டிட்டு போக வேணும், கூட்டிட்டு போகணும்னு சொல்றதுக்கு கூட்டிட்டு போறதுக்கு you are not being able to do it. You're not being able to take her to a temple that she's asking for the last 2 years, and you want to come back and tell her that, you know what, I got you a diamond necklace, ma, feel happy. That is not empathy. Empathy is not giving your father a 10,000 watch because it makes you feel good. Instead, you know what, buy a pump set for your dad. He'll be happy with that. And the watch la vandu or scratch ஆச்சு என்ன பண்ணீங்க? 10,000 ரூபாய் watch scratch பண்ணிட்டீங்களா? போடவே மாட்டாங்க. Or I want people who are happy, who think it's a big deal taking their parents for a buffet. 2000 ரூபாய் buffet மாது சாப்பிடுங்க. 65 வயசு அம்மாக்கு 2000 ரூபாய் buffet வேண்டாம். She doesn't want. அதை சாப்பிட்டாங்கன்னா 2 நாளுக்கு அப்புறம் அவங்கள பார்த்தது ஒரு மனுஷன் இருக்க மாட்டான். Nobody is there to take care of you. Or somebody comes saying, Amma, I bought Tirunelveli halwa for you. The moment you go, mom takes and gives it to somebody else and asks them, what happened? Sir, na idu saaptena next 2 days I have tooth pain. Not a single person will come here and help me out. I'd rather not eat it. You don't even possibly know what they eat anymore. அவங்க என்ன சாப்பிட்டாங்க கூட உங்களுக்கு நீங்க தெரியாது. குழந்தைகளுக்கு என்ன பிடிக்கும், அவங்க என்ன வேணும்னு கேட்டா many of you have absolutely no clue. And that's not empathy. Empathy is being in their world. So if your mom doesn't want you to buy her at 10,000 rupees pattu sari, and instead she wants you to take her to 4 temples in her native town, take her and go. Instead she says, adukku bal akka tangachikku nee vandu idu vaangi kodunu solumbodhu, do it. That's what makes her happy. That is empathy. So when you go back today to your life, relook at your family members different, look at your parents, look at your children, look at your wife, find out how can you be more empathetic in the way you speak to them. Because at the end of it, remember, this is the only time you have with them, especially if you have children. And I keep telling you that children will always not be your children. They will grow. They will grow out of you. And then it will be their lives, their wives and their children. And then you might be sitting and saying, no, pay it now, connect panit no. Sir, connect panna, it is going to be extremely hard to connect to them later. If you have children, you have grandchildren, make an effort, make a genuine, sincere effort to be more empathetic. And then you will redefine their lives. And then you realize, you know what, they are more important than the customers. And even though I started off this session by saying customers, I think this is possibly the most important learning to take back. So, I want you to take a moment and relate back to each of these incidents and say, how can I be more empathetic in my house? How can I be more empathetic with my wife, with my children? How can I be in their world? Can I go back and do it? Well, if you want to, you can do that. Now, I shared my own experience. When I sit for food with my boys, I bring up the topic of football. You know why? My boys are hardcore football fans. Yanku football is I possibly have no clue about it. I'm more a hardcore cricket and possibly now a shuttle guy. And what do? I talk. What happens when I started? Oh, they will talk for the next 30 minutes. Illati, why could a customer? So what do I do today? I learned so much about football. So paper football news padipan. So you know why? I can connect to them. I can go back and relate to them. That's what is important. Make an effort. It's not difficult. Because you know what? You have a choice. You have a conscious effort. It becomes a part of your subconscious. So you want to improve your communication with the customer. Many people come back. And even though I titled this, I'm saying this again, even though I titled this customer experience, your customer experiences opportunities are less. But every day in your homes, you have a chance to make a difference. You have a chance to redefine that experience for your children, redefine that experience for your wife, your husband, your father, your mother, your in-laws. It doesn't matter who they are, your brother and sister, your friends. And when you do that consciously from today for them every time, when the time comes to deal with your customer, believe me, you will do it wonderfully and naturally. So with this, I wanted to close the session, but in the current context of COVID, I just wanted to add something. I know many of you are dealing with COVID situations in your workplaces, in your businesses. So remember the same thing I said. COVID is a new situation for all of us, including our team members, everyone. All of us are dealing something which we have never dealt before. Not this generation, not possible the last 100 years has anyone gone through something, which means they don't know how to deal with it. Some of their challenges are real. Now, the problem when you have this, when you're dealing with team members who are coming back, right? Especially again, the lockdown is over in most places where team members are coming back. Have a little more patience with them and be more empathetic, because sometimes our situation could actually be a lot different from what it is. Now, what happens in many cases, without you realize, not that you're doing it wantonly, because you think this is how life is. So it must be for that. It need not be that way for that. So when you think, what is maybe they have fears. Maybe you have not lost a single person in your family. You only heard from other stories. But it's a world of a difference if you talk to them and you realize, our family COVID. That makes a world of a difference, right? Because the fear is magnified when you lose people close to you. If you ask me personally, the first wave, even in my own personal case, right? First wave was more about hearing things. Second wave, in the last 6 months, I personally have seen so many photographs of our own associates, of our own alumni, people who have died from COVID. It is sitting closer home. I've known a lot of family and friends who have lost people. It's sitting a lot closer home. So what if they have had that experience? So be considerate, be genuine. Don't think that they don't have fears. Their fears could be true. You know what? You being the owner of a company, even if something goes wrong, the largest sense, you all are well prepared, right? Maybe you've got enough insurance, you have somebody else to take care of it. What if your employee is the only working member in the entire family and they're completely dependent on them? Their parents and their family is even more worried than you are. You know why? Because if they lose him, their entire life is gone. That could be a real situation. So deal with it a lot more carefully. And some of them are finding it. Also remember, the last, we take IT as an example, 15 months actually, many of them have never gone to the office. 15 months. So 15 months, if you've never gone to an office and you're working from home, and even in manufacturing, possibly in the last 15 months, maybe hardly 5 to 6 months, people are come to workplaces. So what happens there is that they got used to something else. Now, when you suddenly again bring them out of it, any change is going to be difficult. 15 months are padagichu. And interestingly, I was talking to an IT company in Kerala, and they were telling me that when they were asking the team members to come back to work, many of them are saying that, they were threatening to even resign if they're being forced to come back. That's what things are. It's a new experience. We don't know how to deal with it. So all I'm saying is be careful about it, or if you need professional help, people who can go back and help people to change mindsets. There is a lot of uncertainties, a lot of fear, a lot of deaths that have come. Already people are worried. If you look at the media, the way it is. So there's a lot of noise. Children are badiko, schools have been happening. It's not been easy managing with children. Working from home, please don't assume it's fun. Many of you sometimes think, full jolly now, they can do what they want. Sir, it is not exactly the case for many of them. Some of them find it extremely challenging. They say they don't get rest at all. They are continuously working because there is no end time. Start time, end time, not in a factory, company, you come out of the office, you're done. But today, the clock never seems to end. People are expecting you to continuously work. And they are also tired. They are not going out. They are not doing the other stuff. There is no chit-chatting happening. There is no, informal get-together. They don't meet. They don't step out. There's no dinner time. There are no outings. And to sit boxed in the house, suddenly pressure from everybody, it could be a lot different. So, unga veetla 3 bedroom irkalam, 4 bedroom irkalam. So, you know what, each of you stuck in your bedroom is a lot different from somebody who's living in a house with only a single bedroom and a hall and with the sharing. Our anubhavam is very different. So, be a little empathetic and have a little compassion when you identify solutions for your COVID people. And so with this, I want to thank you. It's been a great time connecting with all of you. I'm very happy that I took this opportunity to share with you. And I hope there is something that you have found useful. I'll open the floor for any questions or anything else as a feedback. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Varghese. It has been a very wonderful session and quite a lively one. I think all of us do have our own experiences at home with our team members, within our own organizations, or with the customers. And a lot of thing to learn, basically revolving around empathy. What you have spoken should have touched everybody. We would like to open the mics. People can unmute themselves or raise their hands and share their experiences or pose their questions. Thank you. Friends, you are free to unmute and talk your experience.
Thank you, Varghese sir. It was very wonderful. I think you are standing. I think you are standing and talking. We are all sitting. I mean, most of us are sitting. It's wonderful. Thank you. Thank you for giving us. I don't know the questions, and I can feel what you are, expressing and telling. And in the time when I was in home, also, I felt a lot of time about my mother, doing all those things. காலையில இருந்து முருங்கத்துல சூப் போட்டுட்டு தூதுவளை சூப் போட்டுன்னு சொல்லி ஆரம்பிச்சு சாப்பாடு 3 வேளை. ஸோ சின்ஸ் ஒர்க்கிங் கண்டினியூஸ்லி நம்ம அதை பண்ணி முடியல. இது எப்படி அவங்களுக்கு திருப்பி பண்ணினா கூட ஒருவேளை ஹெல்ப் பண்ணலாம். சில நேரம் நம்மளால ஹெல்ப் பண்ண முடியறது இல்லை. ஃபார் எக்ஸாம்பிள் இன்ட்ரெஸ்ட் வர்றது இல்லை, இல்லை ஒர்க் இருக்கும், இல்லை நைட் நேரத்தில் பாத்திரம் விலைக்கு கொடுக்குறது, இந்த மாதிரி சின்னதான் பண்ண முடியும். அப்போ நான் யோசிப்பேன் எப்படி இது how to repay them. When I was thinking about how to repay my mother and father, then I was perplexed, like I'm thinking very little. I'm thinking about repaying it like a business, getting me money from somebody and giving it back to them. I'm just thinking from in that perspective, I was very guilty to think of repaying them like that. Then I was thinking, then what is the actual solution? I thought of, okay, what they're doing to us, they have to do to the next generation. That time I was even more, stressed, like, because naturally, I am, like most of, I am also, addicted with this phone and things, a lot of things, videos, everything is interesting. Most of the things are interesting. So coming out of it and working and, involved in phone, and later, personal works like washing clothes and other things. Then afterwards, the additional works for the family and things, it's very less time I have. So these are the things that I am, feeling very challenged. And, this meeting, talking about this empathy and compassion, these are, like encouraging things, even though, it's all very difficult, but we have to do it. We have to do it. We have to. So, somebody who is talking to it continuously, we are listening to it continuously, definitely it makes change. So thank you for, thank you for giving it.
Definitely, sir. And I know what, not so much as a question, but as a suggestion is, ask them what will make a difference. Sometimes கேட்டு பார்த்தா போதும். அவங்க கிட்ட கேட்கும்போது உங்களுக்கு என்னமா வேணும் சொல்லும்போது they might tell you what they really want. It could be, like I said, simple things. What will make them happy. It could be something as simple as saying daily you go to 10 நிமிஷம் வந்து பேசுறா. Something as simple as that. And I'm telling you this, right? I've had lots of real stories of people who come back and told me how much their parents have thanked them for the fact that they're just simply spending time with them, right? I've had mothers write to me saying, thank you so much. என் பையனை மாத்திருக்கீங்க, குழந்தைகிட்ட பேசலாம். Something as simple as that. Just spending some quality time itself will make a difference. It's not about, we become very materialistic sometimes, and I think we're forgetting that none of those material things will stay. It's only memories that stays, right? You look back and you don't remember all the other things. You remember those feelings. So create good feelings for them. Do what's important for them. Like I said, that's what matters. If we can help them in some way, do it. And like I said, sometimes no time is an excuse we tell ourselves. We have to make time. What if your friend called you? You'll happily go. Why? Because suddenly that's become important, right? Even if you come back to a long day, say, hey, what are you? So it is not the lack of time. I think it's a lack of interest. Not for you. I'm not telling you about you. I'm just telling us a general thing. Is that you have to build and cultivate that genuine interest in being involved in their lives. Then you will find there is differences.
Yes.
Yeah, we have Haripriya. You can kindly unmute.
Yeah, thanks, Varghese. It was very nice. This question is regarding customer experience. You have, covered redefining the customer experience. In this pandemic situation, given that, like when should I begin to improve or redefine the customer experience? Or how do I determine how much I can or should spend to improve customer service? Because everything is online, right? So when you say it is being empathetic or compassionate, whatever it is, like when you meet one-to-one or the physical meeting, it is different. When it is online, it's gonna be a very, very different thing. So what do you, I just want your insight on that. Thank you.
Okay, so just to make sure I understood the question, your question was when you meetings with customers in this current pandemic period, how much of empathy should I be showing, or how soon should I be starting to? Is that what it is?
How do I begin to improve, or where do I improve or redefine the customer experience? Not being empathetic. I just want it on the line customer experience. How do I redefine it now in this given situation?
Sure. What I'll do is, like I said, there's no perfect answer for everything, but what I can give you is some thoughts that come to my mind. Since you have linked COVID, possibly a good place to start is to figure out how COVID has affected them too, and possibly start from there, seeing from their world of view, right? Because how COVID has affected you could be a lot different from how COVID is affecting your customer. And possibly a good way to start is going to their world and figuring out what is it meant to them. As it means that they've dropped sales, have they losing people, have they been able to go back and are their customers, then customers giving them business. So go into their world and figure out what has changed. And now also remember, right, with COVID, the pain points which you had before may not necessarily be the same pain points that the customer has today. So pain points could have shifted, and go back and identify what those new set of pain points are, and you can start from it. And possibly the first thing you can do as an individual level is whenever you meet them, connect back to them and find out how they feel. How has it personally affected them? Sometimes just being personal with your customer itself makes a world of difference. Just inquiring what it has done to their lives and how it has cost them, and what kind of pain or suffering or chaos they are dealing with itself is a great way to start a communication. So my take would be is identify what new pain points have come for them, identify what's changed, and find out how we can support those areas which have come because of, especially in the context of a post-COVID customer experience. I think that's possibly a great place to start.
Thank you.
Thanks, Haripriya. Anyone else would like to unmute and talk? Kindly go ahead.
Sir, everything become online nowadays. So how to make that empathetic connection with the customers? That's what we know.
Very good question. So, because you're right, even all meetings, a lot of interactions are shifting to online. Now, what is that you will not be able to receive in an online space is that energy. So, the feeling that may not happen, but everything else will still work. You can be more careful about toning. So I tell people have good equipment so that you are able to get there's clarity in sound, and so you're able to find the tune. So same thing, tone, we can connect to their facial expressions, make sure the body language is similar. So you're sitting in a meeting, you will see their observe. What we don't do is we don't observe them, right? We are so focused about thinking, right? We don't think about what is the person sitting there, what is he displaying to us? What are the emotions that are available? So we don't do that. So I think that is something which you can do. And second is you can still bring a level of camaraderie. And you come there, there's a casual conversation. So keep the conversations smaller, bring a level of friendship, friendliness, and need not only be through with video, because sometimes people are sort of sensitive. Many of them do not even know how to behave in front of a camera. So be aware of those things. And sometimes a call is possibly a lot more better. You can connect them, not feel more free. So you feel you're uncomfortable, ask them, sir, phone log page it will be easier for you. Or make them feel absolutely comfortable, right? Be in their language, be in their world, keep your setup simple, relate to it. And that's what will change. And I keep thinking that what I've taught, what I've shared with you today, or if you follow all of them, you will be able to do an amazing difference. But having said that, people are also on the other side of it today. For example, you take children. Schooling is definitely not the same, right? And a lot of teachers are finding that they're struggling to teach because they are just not unable to teach as well, or able to build a connect with students as much as it is in the classroom. There's a level of control. So same thing happens in this. So be aware, and all the more look for moments or find other means. Now, I was talking to an entrepreneur, and he was telling me, Varghese, it has become extremely difficult for me, especially negotiations now. ஏன்னா அவங்க எல்லாம் மாஸ்க் போட்டுட்டு இருக்காங்க. முன்னாடி அவங்க எக்ஸ்பிரஷன் தெரியும், இப்போ மாஸ்க் போட்டதுனால ஒண்ணுமே தெரிய மாட்டேங்குது. ஸோ ஐ டோன்ட் நோ வெதர் நான் பிரைஸ் கோட் பண்றது அவங்களுக்கு ஓகேவா, இல்லை they are happy, they are sad, they are surprised. So he says, I'm actually finding it very difficult to do that. முன்னாடி I could get a pulse ன்னு சொல்லுவார். I could get a pulse. சொல்லும்போது I know, okay, they are happy, இல்லை they want some more. I could do. இப்போ I'm totally getting lost. Now I'm figuring out, how else to do. So definitely you're right, sir. It's not been easy, but that's why we all adapt. We will learn to look for finer elements, right? It's like saying, when someone loses their eyes, their sensitivities to the ears and touch and sound become significantly more. You see, blind people, their sensitivity to sound is phenomenally high. So we will adapt if you are willing to adapt. So you will learn to see nuances even more than before. So mask kulla paathu kandupidikalam. You can find a lot more from the eyes itself. But tone, so use the other modalities, face in the areas getting covered now. There's still other expressions, bodily expressions, the way they relate to the hands. So start being more conscious, mindful of even small behavioral shift in them, behavioral changes in them. That will help you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. It's very insightful.
Yes, Santanam, sir.
Sir, good morning. I asked my customers,
Yes, sir.
whether you have taken both the doses of vaccine. First, they are very much pleased. They also inquired me about all my family, my staff, and everybody. Then I take their advices how to deal with the pandemic and what they face during this lockdown period and all. They will ask for some fund transfer, or I will ask them to pay some bills. Like this, we help each other and we reach each other so easily and nicely. So, and I also remember during this struggle period, there may be some delays in business payments and all. But I remember when I stand like this, they were the reasons to take me to this level before this pandemic. They kept me live because of their efforts. So I remember the good deeds, what they have done before. And I always remember that then the compassion comes easily. The compassion comes immediately. See, they have helped us before, and they will also help us afterwards. This is what I feel during my short period of 48 years of business. Thank you so much.
Fantastic.
Thank you, sir.
I think what you've just displayed is showing a sign of gratitude. And I think that's something this world could need right now, a sense of gratitude for both what you receive and like they say, what you give, and you will get more. So I tell people, show a lot more gratitude to people around you, right from the people who work for you to the mates who are in your homes, because their world is also changing. So gratitude is a great way to start also with respect to empathy.
Varghese, I have one more question.
Yes.
Can I go on?
Yeah,
yes. Yeah. So we were discussing only about the customers, like it is vice versa. So the people who work directly with the customers, they also suffer a lot, right? because they go to the customer's shoes and then wear it and then see, and they have to look into their company's thing, both the world they have to see and then give the justice to the customers. So this we call it as an emotional labor, right? So can you throw any kind of an idea, so how to deal with this person who are dealing with the customers? Because in an organization, we really need to give importance to the people who deal with the customers. How to, I mean, empathetically, as you say, like deal with these kind of people.
Sure, ma'am. I'll possibly try to relate it to from my own personal work experience. Right? I was working in IT for about 16 years. And
okay.
I've also been in sales. I've also been in pre-sales. I've been in delivery too. So I've seen all the three gamuts of the industry. And it's only when you move to sales, you realize what it is to be on the other side of it. Typically, delivery people have a mindset that, you know what, they don't understand our problem. They see the sales guy as the enemy and not on their side. And one of the first things I did, you know, when I was managing is after I came back into casino position, we used to make people relate to the fact that salespeople are on your side first. Right? They are your friends. They are not your enemies, right? Now, the role requires for them to be more empathetic to the customer simply because that is their primary role, is to keep the customers happy and not to keep the delivery guys happy, right? So I think that's a shift that needs to get. So people need to be able to connect to it. So you find that in a lot of issues in manufacturing, right? Marketing guys will say some things are production will be, they know what they don't even relate to. Well, I think you need to be able to bridge the gap, create opportunities for people to understand that we all are fighting a common battle here, which is to make sure that we give a much better experience for our customers. And I think sometimes we just don't do that enough, right? And that's also important to, if you're part of delivery or you're not part of you're the team that's supporting sales, I think it's important to recognize what you're doing consciously so that people relate to it. Remember, at the end of it, they are the ones bringing business. It doesn't make them superior or the people at the back end inferior. No, I'm not saying that. It simply means that they're dealing with something which is not easily doable for a lot of people, right? To be able to go there and run behind a customer, to be consistently able to go back and do it. Just one. So to be able to go back and do that for consistently, I think it's not easy. The kind of pressures they face, the kind of questions they get asked. And I sometimes, that's why I say, encourage your back-end people, if I can call them that, to also be sometimes in customer calls, if not nothing else, just as silent observers. So they get a pulse of what it is to deal with customers. That could also help. And I think equally important is also for salespeople to be trained in the fact that delivery or the back-end team is governed by a different set of expectations. And so sometimes they also have to be sensitive to your situations and what is capable here. And sometimes I think there is a mismatch. And that happens because there is not sufficient communication. This is what I call a communication gap that exists. And this is not something which I consistently see when we talk about sales and marketing one side and the back end, the rest of the teams. There is definitely a gap in many cases. But you have to find ways to bridge it. You have to find innovative ways to do that. And possibly in many cases, just to give them experiences of customer handling, give them experiences of customer, especially challenges and issues. Most companies, when there are major issues in the customer, it's only the senior leaders or the big people who go and sit in. So what happens, people down the line have no idea how the customer is reacting or what the customer is going through, the kind of language they use and things they say. So I think it's nice to get them to be, if not at least a back-end ground, others may not know about it. But I mean, the customers do not know about it, but they can be made available at least an audio call. So they get a pulse of the kind of pressures that people are dealing with. I think that's something also that will help. And like I say, cross-cultural training expectations, what we call as expectations matching. So that's also something that needs to happen. We do that as some of the trainings what we provide, bridging that expectations gap that is there between both the sales or marketing team and the backend teams. I hope that helped answer the question.
Yeah. Thank you. But when you're talking about this, I just have an idea. Like we always try to customize the solution for each and every customer, right? That is what we are trying to do it. So what about personalization? can that create a differentiated customer experience? Instead of customizing, can we go on the personalization of each and every customer? So that it's a controversial thing, then I understand, but is that okay to do it? How far we can go?
I think that will depend purely on the context. Some cases, personalization makes a world of difference, right? Something as simple as that, right? I mean, somebody gives a gift, you give a memento to a company, and then one company decides to take that, make it more personal, right? And they go back and engrave the name of the person and maybe his family members' names. What happens? You just personalized it for them, right? Does it make a difference? I think it would make, in that context, how that person feels. So I think it's purely contextual. Sometimes it's also about whether we have the ability to do that, the capability to do that, or the cost, the ROI in terms of what it takes if you do that. So it's a fine balance that we have to do based on how personalized it can be. So as long as there is ROI, I think it's good. You can always go back and try it with a few select customers and see how the feedback is, how the response has been, and what the outcomes are, how the outcomes have shifted. And then if it's working, you can take it forward.
Yeah, thank you.
Anyone else would like to talk or add anything? Swishnath?
Sir, good morning. Just a small question. I mean, being empathy is very important, but the point is, whenever often we travel in our day-to-day busy life, we tend to forget about it. So what happens? The consistency of that feeling is not there. So what's your advice? Like, sometimes, when you are stressed out, or sometimes even particularly when you are under pressure, whatever learn we want to do, we tend to forget it. So what's your opinion to have a consistency of the empathy? Do you have any strategies to have that?
Okay, good one, sir. I'm sure possibly this question is relevant to a lot more people also sitting out here, right? Now, I'm possibly going to answer this by asking you a question. Now, please don't take it that I'm questioning you. It's just that I'm trying to elicit the answer or create a realization from you itself, right? Now, let me ask you this. Now, what happens if there is something that you need to do to your customer regularly? What will you do?
Could you again ask me? I did not get your question.
What if there is something that you need to regularly do for your customer? Let's say you need to, just a simple example, you need to wish him thrice a week. I'm just saying as an example. Let's say that's something that you feel is important. What will you do if you have to continue to do that?
That's why I mean, like, what will you do if I do it continuously, you mean?
Illa. How will you sustain it? How will you bring that consistency to make sure it gets done? Let's say your team
planning, yeah, planning. You have to have plan.
Correct. So you will plan
and yes, and then write it down, and then just check it out whether I'm doing it or not, at the end of the month. Absolutely.
So
good.
That's the same thing here. So at the end of it, yeah. So if it doesn't work, what do? You go back and analyze, right? Beautifully you said. You go back and let's work out. I told you to speak to them 3 times. Why? The difference is this, and this is what I said earlier. It's all about making it important enough in your life. It's a conscious decision to make. Take something as today, you try teaching your 3-year-old or 4-year-old kid to brush their teeth. Oh, it's such a difficulty, right? But today as grown-ups, it doesn't matter because we've grown. Even though it was not something we enjoyed, we learned it, and then we realized it's important. We consistently, what they do, our parents consistently made an effort to let us know that it's important. And then they made us do it. They pushed us to do it. They used to brush it for us, and finally they watch us brush it. And then finally they reach a stage that they think, okay, at least he's brushing his teeth now. Whether he brush it now, right way or not, at least he's brushing it, right? So sometimes it's that. When it is important, you do that. But at the same time, do we do that for everything else? Are children disciplined? Are they consistent in everything else? No. Somewhere we have let it not be that important, or we have not followed it up enough. So I think the same thing here. If you realize empathetic communication or compassionate communication is important for you, then you just do whatever it takes to make it happen. Set it up, reminders, put it everywhere. I'm compassionate. I'm an empathetic person. Empathy for me means I will ask them these questions. Empathy for me means, remember, empathy is different for each of us in terms of how we relate to, right? So I want you to kind of personalize it for you. For Mr. Elango, empathy means when my team member comes, instead of saying no, I will first ask him, yeah, I will find out why it is important for him. So stick it up. You do that 5 times, well, it still doesn't change. You might do that 50 times, it starts becoming a habit. By the time you do it 500 times, it has already become a habit. So, and that's how we learn, right? We all are skilled at learning anything we want. You drive in India, you drive on the left-hand side of the road. The moment you go to US, you need to drive on the right-hand side of the road. It takes you a few days, but you know what? The rest of it works because you know how to drive. It's just that about that mindset shift. You go back, maybe within a few days, maybe within a few attempts, you quickly adapt. That means your brain is capable of shifting. That's all I'm trying to say. Interesting, you come back to India, you're again shift. Maybe it takes you a few days. Then again, you go back to be able to drive on the left-hand side of the road. So I think, is there inherent capability in us to change? I think there is. Absolutely. We are phenomenal beings with tremendous amount of capabilities. Sometimes it's just that we need to make it important enough. Like I said, what if every time you fail, if you raise the bar, like in some cases, what if you have to give away 10,000 rupees each time? No, like I'll give you a simple example. Let's say if your children come and talk to you, and you tell your children that every time you talk to you, and if I don't respond to you the right way, or I don't spend at least 10 minutes after I come back, what if I had to give you 10,000 rupees each time? What happens then? And if, let's say you absolutely do, you keep it, what you have to do. So by the time you pay 5 or 10 times, you know what, you're now becoming conscious of it, or you're going to change the rule. Or you tell them, you know what, appa thalila kottu non podu. You know what, they'll happily give you. But what happened? You just raised the bar. So I think we just have to find what works for us. For some people, stick will work. I think for some people, carrots will work. So somewhere you need to ask yourself what, and the question you need to ask yourself is, why is it important for me? If you have the answer for why it is important for me, then the rest of it will follow.
I completely agree with you. But the only point is the shift is happening very slowly, you know. That's why, because being an, you know, the point is how to do it in a faster way. Do you have
increase the quote, sir? Increase the quote. Weekla solunga. I'll give you a quick example. In the weekla, you tell them, "Unga ponati pesumbo, avanga munju paathu pesana, thalayila undu pottu podunu solunga parunga. Naalu kottu vaangathula maariduvinga."
Anyway, thank you. Thanks so much, sir.
Sure, sir.
Anybody else would like to unmute and ask?
Sir, management is interested about return on investment. So how can we produce ROI and justify because this is based on the empathy, we are doing some action plans, things like that. Now, how can we justify?
So it's possibly very difficult to quantify something like this. It's like asking, if you ask a sales guy, what does a coffee do in a sales call, taking for a coffee? If you ask him, he will tell you it makes a world of a difference, because when you sit over a coffee or sit over a drink, depending on where you are, things flow. So can I put a value to that and say this is how it is? Sometimes it's unlikely. But today companies are realizing, and leadership is realizing, that we have to see the customer's world. And it's all about how you put it. You don't have to talk it as empathy. You talk about it as customer experience, right? Like the ma'am earlier said, you call this as a customer experience. Wouldn't your company be interested in shifting the customer experience? Wouldn't they be interested in redefining the customer experience that they face with you? Why would they say no? They would not say no. So the question is, how do you go about it? Is the only thing that's going to change. You can redefine the customer experience by sending them a memento. You could do that, right? You could do that instead by calling them every day and wishing them. I'm just saying something as simple. You could make sure that you do the right things. You make sure that what they want is always taken care of, and you do it on time. Each of them gives them different experience. The point is, what is giving you the maximum results? And sometimes you got to measure that. And sometimes these are also complementary to that. You're not being nice because you have to be nice. See, that's where the difference is, right? I tell people, and if you listen carefully, I said, I choose to be on the other side because I want to be. I choose to be empathetic, not because I'm expecting something. I choose to be empathetic because, you know what, that's the experience that I want to leave with them when they have had that interaction with me. Not because I gain anything from it, simply because that experience itself is a gain. Now, I had instances where, a conversation in a train has led to a business, simply because the fact that you are willing to talk to them and understand them has led to a business. Now, me sitting and talking to them on the train and finding out about their life could have been like, how does it matter? But sometimes that's what it is. So I think being compassionate is not it's a choice you have to make. And you do this for the right reasons, for the simple reason that you give a better experience to the people that you deal with, not just your customers. And I keep telling that everybody, the watchman, maybe, how many of you even wished your security guard? Think about it. Right? How many of you even wished them? They might wish you. Have you ever thought of you starting to wish them? Most of you, at least some of you, respond to the wishes. Have you wished them in the morning when you first see them? Think about it. So for me, it starts from there. Now, does it mean I'm going to gain anything from it? Well, I may not gain anything from it, but sometimes I will gain the experience he gains. Maybe, you know what, when your parcel comes, you might call up and tell you, sir, Varghese sir, sir, or you come and talk. Not that you expect that, but what you did in the process is create an experience for him that's different. And I think that's all we can do. We are all here for a limited time. And all I keep telling people is use the time in a way to maximize the impact on people. And I think you'll find that the results will come.
Talking about giving advices when it is required. If children ask, you give the advice. Otherwise, you stay quiet and listen to them. There's some experience I went through, Varghese. I have a 27-year-old boy and a 23-year-old girl. She graduated in Singapore last year, and during the COVID time, being a foreign student, she had a lot of challenges in getting her employment as well as the employment pass, everything there. So on an everyday interaction, as parents, we used to feel, you know, we are doing a lot, helping her manage her expense till the time she gets settled. We used to advise her. Whenever she used to get emotional, I used to tell her, I used to give her examples of how people suffered and this and that, how we came up, all those gyans I used to give her. And of course, we have a lot of our alumni friends in Singapore, so I used to ask her to go visit them. And people are also inviting her to come. One fine day, she told, have all your contacts with you. Take care of your business. Leave me to do what I am doing. You know, if I ask you for any help, then you please give me. Till such time, you be empathetic. Fortunately, I had my son who was able to understand. So he started talking to her in the same language. And he was able to tell her that, yes, I understand what you say. And then slowly, I also changed myself over a period of time. So this is a very good example that, when you were talking today, I was able to connect.
Absolutely. I'm telling you that, right? Sometimes we do it. I mean, not to say that, man, because I take this class, I'm this perfect being. No, I have my imperfections too, right? But I think what we need to learn to recognize is at some point, you got to learn to let go of the fact that they don't need it. And sometimes when they tell us something, it is not that they're asking you for help. Now, as parents, we tend to think the moment they tell you something that they're telling you solve it for me, they're not telling you to solve it for them. They're just sharing with you. And that's the difference between sharing and asking for help. So we mistakenly relate every interaction as asking for help. And I think at some point we need to differentiate it, right? Sharing simply means I hear you and I'm in that world. I'm going to talk to you about it. And I'm not going to let my fears, my prejudices, my filters block the way I see things. And then you realize the communication is beautiful because they want to talk. But if I start judging them, if I start offering them advice, if I start immediately trying to see from my worldview, you realize it doesn't work. See, as a matter of fact, you know what, since I possibly want to share it to everybody else also, but one interesting thing about advice is that you advise other people based on how you do it, not on how they will do it. We forget that. So many times why advice doesn't work is simply because it works for you, because that's how you know how to do it. And what you say may not work for them. So if you really want to give advice, you have to actually be on the other side to see what is relevant for them and what will work for them. So this is something which I think should be a takeaway. I think unsolicited advice, not with that, especially in today's world. There's enough gyan available. The phones are filled with Instagram's gyan, Twitter gyans. So every day WhatsApp gyan. So I think they get enough of gyan. And if they want to change, if you think that gyan is going to change their life, believe me, they were changed 15 years back. They change when they want to change. And they will find a way. They're all smart people. They will find a way.
Very true. Very true. So Gopi, shall we?
Yeah, we'll close. I think we had a fabulous session from Varghese.
Yes.
Thank you, Varghese. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for taking your time out